Starting a few days ago, Cubans in Cuba began protesting the communist regime and began demanding freedom with chants such as Libre. And this has brought many reactions from the United States and many of them have been either hypocritical or full of lies. And in some cases, both. So, what are the lies and is the hypocrisy? Well, stay tuned, because that's all coming up on the Forward File. What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Forward File. If it's your first time here, be sure to subscribe to the channel. It'd be greatly appreciated. And today's case file is about the response by the United States over the protests in Cuba and how the Cubans are demanding freedom, and how the reactions are sometimes full of hypocrisy and or lies from both Republicans and Democrats alike. Democrats are mostly both. Republicans are mostly hypocrisy. Democrats are both lies and hypocrisy. Cubans began protesting a few days ago against the communist regime down in Cuba. That has been there since Fidel Castro established it in 1959, after the Cuban Revolution that lasted from 1953 to 1959. And he led it with his brother Raul and Che Guevara. And the current Cuban president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, says that the coverage of the protests and the unrest is a lie. Well, pretty interesting from a commie. So the hypocrisy begins with Republicans who do more to support the fight for freedom in Cuba and also Hong Kong too, than fight for the freedoms of Americans, which are being taken away, by the way. Especially with LA reinstating their mask mandate, even for vaccinated people, and all the other mandates and lockdowns throughout the whole pandemic. And by the way, the LA mask mandate, the LA County Sheriff says that he won't enforce it. So he's doing more than Republicans in government. Talk of forced vaccinations and this door-to-door vaccine thing that the Biden administration wants to do, which won't not be received well, by the way, by rural Americans, which also Kamala Harris seems to think live in some 1800s type way, thinking that they don't have, like, she probably thinks that rural Americans don't have running water. I mean, typical from a liberal elite like her. But also things outside of the pandemic, like the tyranny of big tech. But Republicans are more worried about Cuba. But to be clear, I 100% support the Cubans' fight for freedom, and I hope that communist regime falls. But if the Republicans fought as much as they do for the freedom of Cubans and people in Hong Kong as they do for Americans, then not only would the Republican Party be better off, but the country would be better off. And I'm not just talking about Republicans in government. I'm talking about just conservative influencers or just normal conservatives who are being so big about this Cuba thing, but then like totally ignore or just downplay what's the freedoms being taken away here in America. So that's for the Republicans. For the Democrats, at first, they kind of lied. They did lie about why the Cubans are protesting. They said something about it being for vaccines or whatever, and that the embargo placed by the U.S. on Cuba is the reason for the vaccine shortage there. But the embargo does not include medicine or things of that nature. So that's the commies' fault for not distributing correctly. And that's not surprising from an ideology that has killed hundreds of millions of people throughout history. And also, apparently, Cuba, which has been revered by socialists and commies everywhere, well, and also in America, that as there's some great communist utopia. But apparently they need an evil capitalist nation's help in order to support itself. So, yeah, great ideology you got there. And some of the libs who came out in support of Cuba and how they were complaining about how the Cuban dictatorship censors and restricts freedoms, but then they endorse that here in America, censorship of ideas and things they don't like. So, very hypocritical, not surprising though. And like I said, for Republicans, conservatives, not just the Democrats in government, but also just normal people who are liberal, whether influencers or celebrities or whatever. And as for Black Lives, remember Black Lives Matter? Yeah. Sorry to break it to anyone who supports BLM and supports the Cuban people at the same time. BLM supports the communist regime in Cuba, and they praised Fidel Castro. So, sorry to break it to you, but anyone who knew anything about BLM's true motives as a Marxist organization wasn't surprised. But anyway, and yeah, even a real life example coming up here. I know there's a girl from high school who I went to high school with, who's from Cuba, and her family fled from Cuba, fled communism, and I've seen her post stuff about her support for the Cuban people, fight for freedom, and everything. I remember that she got all triggered when you mentioned communism or Che Guevara or Fidel Castro at school, which, rightfully so. She lived through communism, and communism is garbage, and she lived through it, so rightfully so, she should be promoting freedom and from the country she's from. But she's a liberal who supports BLM, and I've just always wondered what the thought process is behind that, because BLM is a Marxist organization, so her opposition to communism and her support for a Marxist organization kind of contradict each other. And obviously she's not the only one who has the same things. Other people also do this. We're very contradictory, and especially when Cubans that fled communism tend to vote more Republican. And it was a big reason why Miami-Dade County, which has a huge Cuban population, swung, I believe, over 20 points to Trump in this previous election. So, and it's also why Dem Support having refugees come in from Somalia, but not so much from Cuba. It's because Somalian refugees vote pretty much 90-10 plus in favor of Democrats, and Cubans, it's more in favor of Republicans. So yeah, see, Democrats, they're just trying to import voters. They don't really care about those people. But topic for another video. I guess it's kind of like when a Californian leaves California because of the policies they voted for, whether it's super high taxes or whatever, and then they go to a more conservative state, Texas as an example, and then they continue to vote for the policies that they left in the first place. Like, I don't get the thought process behind that. Just to be clear, I'm not trying to totally own her with facts, reason, and logic. Yeah, totally owned you, lib. I'm not trying to do that. I was just interested in why her beliefs are the way that they are. And if she ever comes across this video, which, I mean, it won't take a detective to figure out who I'm talking about, whether if it's her who watches this or someone we went to school with. It won't take a detective to figure out that it's her who I'm talking about. But if she ever comes across this, she's more than welcome to, discuss this with me and why she supports a Marxist organization, and which contradicts her opposition to communism, and why she supports Democrats who many of them endorse the communist regime in Cuba and want to bring socialism here to the U.S. with policies like the Green New Deal, which, well, socialism isn't communism. Well, Vladimir Lenin once said, I don't know, you might know him, very popular communist throughout history. the goal of socialism is communism. So, a socialist policy like the Green New Deal will eventually lead to communism here in America. So, again, not trying to call her out or anything, or have a checkmate liberal moment, just interested to her thought process and just using an in real life example that it relates to my video topic. So that about wraps up this video. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like this video and comment what you thought. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another one. And maybe even share this video with either a conservative who cares more about the freedom of Cubans than the freedom of Americans, and also a liberal who supports BLM and the Cuban people's freedom at the same time. Very contradictory stuff. So, until next time, we can call this case closed.